Well, hello everybody, and welcome to Painless Universal, a conversation with myself and Welsh. Today I'll be talking to Chicago native, Alabama raised, Atlanta-based poet, WJ Lofton. He's an artist, writer, editor, songwriter, centering his work on the intersection of Black queer identity, raging against corporate violence on the bodies and the minds of marginalized communities. His work has been featured in Time magazine and many other publications around the world. As a writer, he's worked alongside academic, award-winning nominated producer and director Ava DuVernay, and was a recipient of the Law Enforcement Accountable Project Artist Grants. WJ is an activist in his own way, as you could say, and he's really adamant to speak up for the queer guys and for the injustice around the world. I'm super excited to talk to him about these key issues that affect so many. His recent poem, Would You Kill God Too?, talks about questions to the Metropolitan Police Department about Breonna Taylor's death. I can't wait for you to join us in this conversation and understand more about WJ and his work. Meet WJ.
We bury our babies as you polish your badges, break batons over our beloved's backs. Officers, Cosgrove, Mattingly, Hankinson. How many nights have you hid the stench of homicide, tucked it in the farthest pockets of your dreams? How do you explain this to your children? Leave me where the light is.
Welcome to Painless Universal, a conversation with myself and Welsh. Today's conversation is super exciting. And if you don't know Williams, I think after this, you must have subscribed to his page, follow him, and do whatever he does, just follow it, because he is super amazing. And he really talks about hard-hitting issues that he's not afraid to discuss. And a lot of people, we go around in corners trying to have this conversation. Not William. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm very well. And how do you go by? Do you go by William or W? I think it's WJ you normally go by. How do you know which
Yes.
one do you prefer?
Yeah, I go by WJ. My friends and family call me William. So I feel like we're family at this point, so you can call me William. That's fine.
No,
Yeah.
I call you the professional name because that's how I can find you.
Yes.
Anyone who's
Yes.
looking out for you, you will see you as WJ, so I'll go as WJ. Thank you, WJ, for joining me. How are you today?
I'm great. I'm great.
And where are you joining me from?
Atlanta, Georgia. It's a bit early. It's 6 a.m. here.
Oh no, I'm super excited you said yes. And I think this is one of the issues with having conversations with people around the world. With Painless Universal, we're a global company, and we have to have this all kinds of I tell people I sometimes stay up to 1 a.m. to just have a conversation with all sorts.
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
worth it. The conversations are always worth it. So I'm so glad you got up this early hours of the morning to talk to us. WJ, before we start, I saw your work, and I think your work was truly inspiring because you really hit the nail on the head with your poem. And that poem meant so much. And I think the title was Would You Kill God Too? If
Yes.
anyone hasn't listened to that or read that poem, go read it, because I've actually done something where I said, where is God when there's pain? And this is very similar. Would you kill God too? Before we get into all of that, how you got that poem commissioned, a little bit of history about the poem, just tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is WJ?
So I'm a Black queer poet based in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois. I've spent most of my life in the South, where I learned the music of language, where I witnessed, you know, apathetic racism, and I had the desire to speak against it. And you know, traveling the world, serving through the military, I began to ask myself certain questions and how I wanted to impact the world. And in that way, I wanted to tell the truth. And I do that through poetry.
So, one other thing you did mention is that you're a queer artist and you're very
Yes.
open about it. And so many people in this day and age, especially being a Black guy, we're not
Mhm.
very open about talking about it. What gave you that confidence? When did you realize that enough is enough of this hiding and let me be true to myself?
Yeah, so there was this one day where I had written a poem and it had been selected for this magazine, Scallywag magazine. And they labeled it as Black queer identity without, you know, me actually wanting it to be labeled that way. But it gave me the courage to just post on my social media and say, you know, I wrote this article and I'm not going to not post it because it was labeled as such, because it was labeled the truth. And so from that point forward, I said, if I'm going to present the world who I am, I'm going to present 100% of myself.
Was it difficult? Was it
Of course, of course. What I know is though, so many people do not live in their truth and they are afraid of people who do. However, they will never get the courage if the ones who are hiding, you know, do not take possession of their power. And so in that moment, I decided to choose myself, say yes to myself, say yes to the universe and to God, and say, I'm going to agree with what you have created in this vessel. And that is my work.
this is truly amazing because why I read is I really think about what you say is that so many people in this world, it doesn't matter if you're Black, you're white, they're living in miserable circumstances and they don't have the power to get out because of they're afraid. What would their family say? What would the world think about me? How would I present myself to the world if I come out as this? Some people just want to have. I've seen a beautiful lady, she's an artist, she lives in Istanbul, she's from Turkey. She wants to have pink hair and she's 67, but she said that's what gives me joy, but she didn't know how to do it when she was much younger. She decided to do it and she's now living her happiest moment. Now she has her pink hair. But so many people just can't. When you look back at that moment when you wrote that poem and they said, they put you as queer and they labeled it. Could you remember how you felt in that moment?
So there was this initial moment of fear. It
Okay.
was, oh, the cat's out the bag. But then there was this moment where we are all presenting with these moments where we can reclaim our power. And I always post, because I like to share my art with people. And so there was this moment where I was like, but this is who I am. This is one of the most important things about who I am. I think I am exceptional because I am queer. And so I decided to post anyway and allow people to get to know who I really am. So many people go throughout their life without being known, without being seen. And I want to give myself the gift of being seen. I also want to allow people to see me, you know. And
Hmm.
it's a when that way we all win.
How did your family take it? How was you?
My family, you know, my family's really amazing. My sister's really amazing. I'm surrounded by, and this is another thing, oftentimes we are surprised by how people respond, sometimes in very negative ways, but there are times where we allow ourselves to be loved like we would have never imagined by those around us.
Mm. And how did that lead to your writing skills? Because you're a great writer. You just
Oh, thank you.
you just tell a story in writing format. how did that come out? Where did you get that from?
So, my earliest memory of wanting to be a writer, my father had this sketch. He was an artist. He had a sketch on our living room wall. And I remember wanting to have the language to describe that. And from that point forward, I always searched for words that would be able to allow me to describe circumstances that I was in. So I've been writing for a very young age. And I think my writing became more powerful when I was able to label myself as queer because I was not hiding things. I was telling the truth. And our lives become more powerful, our lives become light beacons when we are not hiding who we are.
Yes, yeah. You really find your true self when you're not
Yes,
hiding. You're able to express yourself more freely. The art
yes,
in you, because your art comes from that other side of you as well.
hmm
That's where the artists come out from, and you are
yes.
it's a beautiful writer. And when did this take from just being a normal writer? Because there's so many writers out there. It's just, where did it take off? When did you realize, okay, there's something exceptional about my work? When did that really dawn on you?
So I took a chance for myself. I was working in Qatar for the government. I was a government contractor, and I had been writing this book of poems called A Garden for Black Boys. And I decided to quit my job and just take a chance for myself. Beyonce has this very famous quote that says, "I can bet on myself each time."
Mm.
And I took that to heart. I said to myself, if I do not believe in myself, if I do not believe in the gift that I have been imparted with, then no one would take me seriously. So I quit my job. I was broke for a few years because I'm a very avid believer in not dwelling in places that don't feed our soul.
That is
And
so.
so I practiced writing every day. I would read books by poets that I admired, and the law of attraction did the rest.
So that's literally, this is what inspires you to do this. To
Yes.
like, wow, that's just too really amazing, because I've been reading all night, and I've been reading your work. I read The Garden for Black Boys, and some of the wordings in there, I think, how did he know to combine these two things together? That is just true, really amazing, and that leads me to my sensitive subject of Breonna Taylor. That now you are now writing for justice, because you've understood the justice that has you've seen from being queer and black as well,
Yes.
and now you started writing, and this just didn't happen. It was led on by a special person. Could you tell us how that came about, and the name, or how it all happened?
Yes. So originally I created a visual piece last summer called We Ask for Fire, asking for justice be brought to the killers of Breonna Taylor.
Mhm.
Breonna Taylor was murdered in her apartment on March 13th. And it shook me to my core. It absolutely, if we are not allowed to be asleep at home with our partner, we're not safe anywhere. And so the video went viral, and I was in the car with my friend, and she says, "Oh, what happens?" She jokingly says, "What happens when former First Lady Michelle Obama sees it?" And I says, "Oh, what happens when Ava DuVernay sees it?" 2 minutes later, I see this, not 2 minutes, 2 seconds later, I see this notification on my phone and says that Ava DuVernay follows you on Instagram. And then we began this dialogue. It was very brief, but she was saying, "Comrade, I'm very proud of the work that you've done." And later, like a few weeks later, her production company, Array Now, reached out to me and asked me if I would do a commission piece through Leap, the Law Enforcement Accountability Project. And I was blown away because literally this was a moment of manifestation, a moment of my heart wanted this for Breonna Taylor, and I knew that I could create something. And I did not seek permission first.
Yeah. For those who don't know, Ava DuVernay, she's the director. She's an Oscar-nominated director, so she's not just any ordinary director. She has done numerous films, and most of her films are, always worth watching. You can't go through any of her films and anything she's directed and you don't want to see it. She is this big, big Hollywood's director. And for her to reach out to you, I can imagine the joy you got that someone of that category reached out to you to ask you about your work and to do a piece. Is this where the piece came together? Because she commissioned.
Yes. She commissioned me through Array Now and Leap Action. And I cannot describe the moment that I saw the message. Ava is one of the most visionary people of our time. And I was blown away. I was simply blown away because nothing was coincidence,
No.
And I'm just very honored to have been able to do this project for her and for Breonna Taylor, and most importantly, to call for the accountability of the officers involved.
Could you tell us a little bit about Would You Kill God and what it's about?
Yes, so basically the piece is a poem that provides visuals. And throughout the poem, I ask a series of questions and I interrogate the interior lives of a family that just wants to go about their day, having a good time with friends, dwelling in love. And juxtaposed to that is the police officer's family. And we see these symbols of historical racism, such as the Confederate flag. We see Ronald Reagan, who was very prominent, who started the war on drugs here in the United States. And so so the audience is allowed to ask how they participate in the system of corporate oppression and violence toward Black and Brown folk.
Yeah, it's really unbelievable what has gone on. And since your release of Would You Kill God, since it's come out, what has been the uptake of it? How have people responded to this?
So it's been very positive responses.
Yeah.
They believe the work is beautiful because every piece of it was made with intention. From the music, the composer Amira Leon, a Black woman, to my co-producer Natalie Sims, a Black woman. So every piece was intentional, every piece. And my goal throughout shooting this with, the director of photography, Sean Michael Craig, was to have these moments where people were able to dwell and say, yes, this is beautiful. Yes, this is the life that people deserve to live. And the reality is Black and Brown folk do not get that chance.
Yeah. And we're just hoping that things will just improve in us. Why, people say slightly. I said, no, I want it to improve a lot more.
Yes.
People feel more comfortable. And even if people have to be arrested for things, the way it's done should be done with dignity as well. Dignity for the person. Forget even color, just for being a human being. Would you do that to your loved pets? No. So just for being a human being, I always say to people, when you deal with human beings, forget the color. Just deal with that person as a human being. And if you could see them as a human being, all you will see is love. Love for another person. So what next for you, WJ? What's the next thing coming in the pipeline that we should be all on the lookout for?
Yes, I'm continuing to do the work of social justice. And most importantly, what I've discovered is the most potent way to seek justice is to tell the truth and to share narratives about ourselves. And so that means, it was very important for me. It's always important for me in my work to uplift marginalized voices, whether it's women voices, queer voices, bodily abled, differently abled folk. And that's the work that I'm going to continue to do, whether it's in book form or video form. That's always the work.
And I would say, what was your hope for Blacks or what's your hope for women? But I would ask specifically for people who are queer out there. They're young and they want to come out, but they don't know how to. They don't
Mm.
know what to say. What would be your advice to them? Someone who just wants.
So my first advice is you owe no one your disclosure. Whenever you are ready, you do it on your time, because there is real life consequences to coming out. But however, there is a life on the other side, and you have a community that is willing to greet you with open arms, and you don't want to live a life in the shadows. Jay-Z has his song where his mother has a poem at the end of it, and she was saying how she lived the life in the shadows, and now she's out, now she's free. And so my hope for queer folk is the hope for all folk, all people, is that they are able to express the most authentic versions of themselves without retribution.
That's very true. Without retribution, because
Yeah.
there is so much about coming out, but at the same time, there's always lots of consequences with it, and you have to be able to fight that within yourself, because
Yeah.
it's not an easy world out there. It's very
Mhm.
mean. We could sit there all we like, but there's still going to be mean people out there. So it's how you have to be brave enough that even if you're going through the dark alley, you could walk through it and not be afraid of the road ahead of you, because you've already
Yes.
made a decision within yourself that you do. In terms of Breonna Taylor, how is that? How is the support she's, the publicity around her death coming? Has your work shined a brighter light on her, on the publicity to help, people better understanding the issue?
Yes, thankfully, with this release, um, a lot of people have viewed the content, and a lot of people have been made aware of the officers' names, that was the mission of LEAP. And so brilliantly thought of by Ava, is that, oftentimes we focus on the victim without naming the murderers, and their names get lost, and they get to go on and live their lives. And we're disrupting that.
Mm.
Specifically, I say in the poem their names, the officers' names, Mattingly, Hankinson, and Cosgrove, so that they know we are coming for them. We are confronting them like they confronted Breonna, and we are not afraid.
That is wonderful. I really enjoyed your conversation. I really thank Ava for helping you, commission this work you just did and shining the light on something that's so sensitive, so delicate, and so important, Breonna Taylor. Thank you, WJ, for your conversation with myself and Welsh.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you.